Hey everybody, and welcome to COG. I'm Red.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we are going to talk about Inside. But before we do that, Nathan is a very special guest, our first collaboration ever. Do you want to talk about your channel at all or plug it?
Yeah, sure, that sounds great. I mostly do Let's Plays, almost entirely in fact, but occasionally I'll do like a vlog video or an indie game dev vlog video, or even just something that has to do with tech or even alt tech, because I don't just post videos on YouTube, I also post on BitChute.
You also have like these awesome streams that I've been in the chat, and they're just a lot of fun. You're very knowledgeable about the games that you play, and I really like being there and hearing what you have to say and seeing you defeat like really hard games.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
If you guys are ever bored, check him out. It's some good stuff.
Thanks, man.
Nathan is the one that introduced me to this game Inside. It was right after my Limbo review. He told me to check this game out, and I just want to know, like, what first got you to play Inside?
For me, it was when I saw the first announcement trailer at E3, and as soon as I saw that Playdead Games was introducing something new, I didn't even care what it was. I was like, nope, I gotta have it. I loved Limbo, so I gotta play this too. And, well, we're gonna get into that for sure.
I was a little bit skeptical just because, if you guys have seen my review, I was kind of lukewarm on Limbo. While I liked its aesthetic and some of the gameplay, and especially the sound design, I was not totally in love with certain aspects of that game. So when Nathan told me to check out Inside, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to think of this one. Luckily, I played it and I actually love this game. I thought it was really, really good. And I'm guessing you do too.
I think in a lot of ways it's actually superior to Limbo. Like, for me, I thought that Limbo certainly had its charm because we didn't really ever have anything like that before. But I think what Inside did was take something of a similar vein and really expand on that. I think they blew this one out of the park.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that. While Limbo was beautiful, this game is also beautiful, but I think that it really kind of evolved that aesthetic they were going for. Now it's like in a 3D environment, 2.5D, and we can see more of the world. And Limbo, while you were exploring this world, I never got to understand quite how the world functioned, but within Inside, I can see that. And that's one thing that I really liked about this, is the world building without really any words.
Yeah, not a single piece of dialogue in the whole thing. And yet, if you just look at like items laying on the ground or things in the background, just the happenings around you, you start picking up what could be the story and what could be really going on.
And that cryptic nature of it, I think, is what really sucks you into this game, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it's a very delicate thing to play with when making a game like this, because you can make it so cryptic that nobody really understands what's going on and ends up not really giving a shit. But in this, you know, they do it in such a way that at least I found it really, really intriguing, and I was just totally sucked into it. And I remember the first time I played it, I ended up doing the whole thing in one sitting because I had to figure out what was going to happen.
I was kind of the same way. It really reminded me of being a little kid and watching like the Twilight Zone or something, where you're just introduced to this different world that's just so weird, has its own rules. I really loved it. What did you think of the movement in this one, like the controls and how it felt overall?
I really liked how it's essentially the same as Limbo for like grabbing and pushing things. So that was immediately familiar. I think it felt a bit smoother though. Like, I think it actually felt better than Limbo did. It seemed a bit more reactive. It seemed more responsive. So that worked really well for me.
I would agree with everything you just said. The main thing that I noticed is with Limbo, it seemed like whenever you died, it would fade to black, but it was incredibly slow. With Inside, you're right back into the game. And I really appreciate that because it kind of alleviates some of the frustration that I had with Limbo.
And I feel like they did a good job with the checkpoints in this. It didn't feel too repetitive. Like, sometimes in Limbo, you would die and you'd spawn only a few feet back.
One thing that I also really appreciated in this game is with Limbo, there was a lot of puzzles where it was very trial and error. You never knew when you were going to die. Inside has a tiny bit of that, but it's not that much. It's not as bad as Limbo, and I just kept playing it because of that.
There was only one puzzle, I think closer to the end, that I found a little clunky, and I didn't really know what was going on until I finally figured out, and that was the only thing that kind of slowed down the gameplay for that. But other than that, it flowed quite nicely.
So with that said, do you want to just get into the game now?
Yeah, let's go for it.
For me, this first part of the game was a little bit difficult just because I was getting nervous that this was a lot like Limbo, that this was Limbo 2.0, because you have these guys chasing you with guns, and there were a lot of points when I kept dying and I wasn't quite sure what I had done done wrong just because I hadn't played the game before. On my second playthrough, it was really cool. It was almost like watching a movie, but that first playthrough, I was like, oh shit, what has Nathan gotten me into? I don't really want to do this right now. But right after I got past those gun guys, I really started to enjoy the game a lot. What did you think of that first part?
I recall a similar experience when I first played, and maybe this is by design. I actually found that part to be kind of the least intuitive. Like, there was even one point where the guy with the gun, he trips behind you, and you actually have to just wait for a second before proceeding again. And I think maybe that was deliberate so that the player would see what he was really getting into, you know, in terms of like the universe, and just see how dangerous that world is and how easily you can die. So I think maybe they did it on purpose so that you could experience those deaths and say, oh my god, this is what we're dealing with?
Yeah, I would say that, because along with a lot of these other themes, one thing that is still in this game that Limbo has is those really brutal deaths. What one would you say is more brutal?
I don't know. I think in my mind, and it could be just because I wasn't used to it at the time, I think I found Limbo to be a bit more brutal because I think the kid is younger, so there is that sense of just, you know, it's that much more dark. But I don't recall any nasty buzzsaw deaths in Inside.
No, there wasn't really anything to that extreme, which is something that I kind of appreciated about this game because it is a little bit more detailed. There was one point when the kid got chopped up in a fan, but I wasn't like disgusted with it like with Limbo, because I think Limbo just allows you to like come up with your own interpretation of what's happening on screen, where this one's a little bit more cut and dry, right?
Yeah, exactly, because like the silhouettes that you get in Limbo, it leaves a little bit of room for the imagination that sometimes actually makes it worse. And yeah, like you said, you get chopped up by the fan and you can actually see it, but even though it's a bit more realistic looking, it's not like super hyper realistic graphics, so it's a little bit easier to get past, I think.
I would agree. Okay, so I think in order to talk about this game more in depth, we're probably going to have to get into spoilers after this.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so this is the spoiler section. If you don't want to hear this, then get out. Yeah. We don't want you. No, no, please stay. Did you have any like favorite parts in this game?
I'd have to say easily my favorite part is, and especially because audio is such a big part of this game, would have to be the part both leading up to and actually experiencing whatever that shockwave thing was.
Yeah, the bridge.
I thought the lead up to that was just so good because, you know, long before you ever get there, you just hear these faint, low bass thuds in the background, and it keeps getting louder and louder until eventually you see like the doors rattling as you get up to it, and then you finally get there and you're like, what the hell is going on here?
That part was really intense.
Yeah, like it's just feeling like every few seconds, like, okay, it's going to happen again, and you have to be ready for it each and every time.
I remember dying a fair amount of times on that part, just because there's a particular part where there's like this shield, you have to pull a lever, and you have to stay behind that shield or else you die. And it was hard to keep up with that, but it was a lot of fun. I liked that puzzle.
I lost a few times on that one, and honestly, I didn't mind because I was just so enthralled with that section, I didn't mind experiencing a bit more of it.
Was there any other parts that you liked?
I think the first time that you get introduced to the mind control aspect of it, it just adds this whole other layer to the gameplay and the story as well. Like, there's so much more wonder at that point. You're like, what's really going on here?
Because you pull that worm out of that pig, and you're like, okay, this worm has something to do with mind control or making people go crazy or something. Then you jump into that helmet, and you're controlling, I think, 4 guys.
And then you start seeing, like, the more logical evolution of that element when you start controlling, like, more than one group at a time and that kind of thing. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the game. And also, if you'll notice too, the mind control worms is also a running theme with Limbo as well, because those worm things would jump into your head and then start forcing you to walk in a particular direction.
Oh, I did not notice that. That's pretty crazy. So they might be in the same universe, maybe?
It's hard to say. I think there might be enough differentiation between the two that I don't know if you could necessarily directly correlate they're in the same universe or not.
Because Limbo is very like spiritual journey kind of vibe to it, where Inside is more of like a dystopian nightmare.
Yeah, like maybe Limbo isn't even on Earth or in our dimension, but I think Inside, I think it is supposed to take place on Earth, and this is the aftermath path of something terrible.
It's very interesting to see just the correlation to these two games. I just recently played Limbo, so I could easily see the themes and the ideas be built on with Inside, even though I'm not so sure if they're in the same universe. That was just something that I was spitballing. But I really enjoyed that part that you're talking about as well with the mind control people. I just really liked their animations. I thought that they looked really cool when you were controlling them, and just the way that they moved like zombies, but kind of almost contemporary dancing in some points. And I thought it was pretty cool.
It's like a little bit of like zombie movement, but also like marionette puppets. It has that kind of feel to it. At least for me it did.
And the animations were just amazing just in general with this game.
Yeah, they really were.
This boy, for example, he has real weight behind him. And it's cool to see him jump and run and roll, you know, when you hit the ground or something. It looks really good, and it makes the game feel really good.
And they do a really good job of building the tension and putting you in tense moments. Like anytime the dogs are chasing you, or when you had to mimic what everybody else was doing.
That was one of my favorite parts, is the mimicking part, because I thought that it really built on to the themes of the game, and I also thought that it built on to this general atmosphere of, you better do as this dystopian government tells you, or they're gonna fucking kill you.
And that's exactly what happens if you screw up.
But it was a lot of fun. It was almost like a rhythm game at some points, and I thought that was cool.
What about you? What would you say were your favorite parts of the game?
So that was one of them, and then I liked the water monster quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the water monster was really interesting.
Yeah, there's like this baby thing that has like hair. I don't know what it is, but anything to do with a water monster scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, underwater stuff is always immediately scary.
It's really scary. I liked it quite a bit though, because there were some really cool puzzles on how to get this thing away from you and be able to make it to where you need to get to. One particular puzzle that I can remember is there's this chain that you can dangle yourself off of and bait it to go to where you want to, and then you go back to the platform and jump into the water and you can make it to your destination. If you don't do that though, you're screwed.
Yeah, that part was pretty intense too, because that little thing is vicious. I don't know if I call it a mermaid, but that that thing does not play around. If it gets a hold of you, you're done. And yet you have to bait it towards you.
It breaks the fucking glass of your submarine. It does not look that strong, but somehow it does that. It's scary, dude.
Yeah, it is really scary, and it makes really weird sounds when it gets close to you.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too. I think those were the main two parts other than the ending. I don't know if you want to talk about that quite yet.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about audio, perhaps, as I think that was a pretty big part of this game.
Yes, so you were saying that there was like scary noises with the mermaid thing?
Yeah, like as it got close to you, these really intense noises as it got close to the submarine, and it was very unsettling.
Sound is a really important part of this game. That was one part where I really noticed it. The other part that I really noticed it in was the marching, where you have to march with all these zombie people, because there's like this heartbeat as you get closer.
Yeah, and if you have really good headphones, it's a pretty intense experience.
Oh my gosh, it really is. I can't believe how intense it feels as you're getting closer to this line of people. Was there any other parts that stood out to you when it came to sound?
When you're in the submarine and you break through the wood for the first time, and it sort of opens up and the camera pans out and you can see kind of the vastness of the water, and the music cues in at that point. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like...
It's like ethereal.
It was sort of tense, but it was also really relaxing at the same time. Like, it was this kind of almost euphoric experience for my ears. Like, it was a treat. I got tingles listening to it.
Kind of similar to Limbo, how I would say that there were certain parts that felt like a spiritual experience. Inside has the same type of scenes in it, which I would say that is one of them. I remember one thing that got me to play this game is that you shared with me that they like recorded the music in a human skull or something.
Yeah, they put the microphone inside a human skull, and he went to a university, I guess, and he inquired about buying a human skull to record the audio from that. I mean, that pretty much brings the dankness level up to level 10, but
I don't know why, though. Like, what was...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it improved or depreciated the audio. I just liked knowing that that was the case. And now you can know that when you go play it.
I guess it kind of adds to it, because I just think this was recorded in a fucking human skull. I didn't know that it was from a college, so I was worried that it was like his grandma's skull or something.
Good lord.
But knowing that it was from a college makes me feel a little bit better, right? There was a lot of really cool moments with the music. Just overall, with presentation, this game is amazing. There's too many moments, I think, for us to even talk about.
Especially for the length of the game, because it's not too long, but man, there's a lot of moments.
It's really beautiful in a very cryptic and spooky kind of way. All right, so with that said, do you think we're ready to go into the last part?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say that one of my favorite parts and my third favorite pick is the very end. What happens is you kind of stuck into this laboratory type place, and eventually you reach this tank that has this, I don't know what to call it, like this disgusting
blob.
Yeah, blob of just limbs and phalanges and heads. It's really gross and it's really creepy. And they did something here that I actually did not expect. I
didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, it subverted my expectations in like the best possible way. You unplug these things from this monstrous being and you get sucked into this monster and you become it. And it's fucked up, dude. Like, it is. It's really messed up. I hated it in the best possible way, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, because I mean, you're this powerful blob monster with all these limbs, but you can also hear what sounds like the groaning of the damned everywhere you go, and it's just like, this is far less pleasant than I thought it would be.
No, and they make you do this for maybe 20 minutes.
It's a pretty long section. There's even like an evolution of puzzles at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can stretch. That's my favorite part. You can stretch upwards.
It's disgusting.
Stretchy, blobby, gooey limbs machine. I don't know.
Limbs machine? That sounds like a Modest Mouse song or something. Limbs machine. It's really gross. And the sounds, like you were saying earlier, just really put an emphasis on this blob and what it sounds like. It just is just stretching and these people are moaning and
Yeah.
It's disgusting. I love it. It's amazing though.
Yeah, me too.
I really liked this part because not only did I feel like it added a little bit more weight to the game and the themes to the game, but I still was having fun in like a grotesque kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you're really powerful at that point too. Like you go into a room and you like rip a server apart because you have the power of all these people behind you now.
Yeah, there's one part in particular that I remember where you break through a wall or a door and you are in like the main office of whoever runs this fucking disgusting laboratory.
Yeah, I just dubbed him CEO for, in lack of a proper name.
Yeah, well, he's the late CEO.
Yeah.
Because you like body slam him into the pavement. And it's awesome. I really liked it.
And I love the scream. That's the closest thing that you get to dialogue in the game, is him screaming as you plummet to the bottom.
And you just hear his bones crack. It's great. And then not only that, but as you are this blob, there are some pretty fun puzzles that I enjoyed too.
You're like tossing boxes around and stuff. It's neat.
Yeah, it still builds on the foundations that it had built before. And I really appreciate that because there's a lot of talk of games being art right now. This game needs to be art. That game needs to make you feel bad to be art. Where I feel like Inside actually succeeds in that, but it never sacrifices being a video game.
It continues to be fun even though it's being artistic at the same time. Because, I mean, you can have a really beautiful walking simulator where, the gameplay itself is boring, but they don't do anything like that in this.
You're entertained throughout the whole thing.
They did a really good job with that.
At the very end, though, at least the ending that I got, there's multiple endings.
Yeah, there's two.
The ending that I got, this blob just hits into a bunch of rocks as it falls down a cliff and it dies. And then the camera pans out. And I fucking loved this ending.
Really?
I don't know what the other ending is, but I did. I really liked it. I'll get more into that when we get into our theories, but I thought it was really good. It made me think. It made me reflect on the experience that I just had.
Oh, that's interesting, because I thought the way you had judged your ending of Limbo, I thought for similar reasons you wouldn't like this one. That's very interesting.
Okay, so with Limbo, it did that, and I felt like there wasn't much to think about. But with Inside, there was a lot of different themes that were put into it and just sprinkled into this world that gave me enough to start thinking more about it and pondering what the reasoning was behind all of this grotesqueness. And I think that there was some really cool themes that were introduced into this. Is your theories a little bit more lore-based?
Not exactly. Some of my theories are based off of just like the things that you actually see in the game, like, you know, like items on the ground and, you know, different things like that. But then other theories are a little bit, you know, just speculation, like what could be.
Yeah, and the game does a great job of just giving these little nuggets to us so that we can kind of figure out our own narrative.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why you like this so much better than the ending of Limbo, because there's a lot more to think about in this game. There's a lot more to it.
What were your theories on some of the things that have happened in this game?
It's weird. It's not exactly another ending, because it doesn't actually happen at the end of the game, because I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's these collectibles that you actually get in the game. It's like a little terminal. I thought it was a bomb when I first saw it, and you like pull a thing out of it. There's a bunch of those all throughout the game, and what you have to do is you have to get all of those, and then you have to go back to where the cornfield is, because hidden behind some of the corn is actually a hatch that you can open up and go down inside.
Oh.
Yeah, and one of the collectibles is in there as well. But then when you go to the end, there's this doorway and like a joystick, and it makes funny sounds as you move the joystick around, but it doesn't give you any input. Well, once you have all the collectibles, you have to do a certain combination on that joystick, and then a door opens up. And, you know, at this point, I was hoping for more answers, and well, I just ended up with a lot more. So what you do is you're walking down like this little crawl space, and it goes for quite a while. The screen almost goes completely pitch black. And then you come to this room that has a bunch of monitors and stuff. And you know the little helmets that you jump into and you start doing mind control stuff? Well, you see one of those helmets, and you see all these yellow cords going into the helmets. And those yellow cords are the same things that the collectibles, the things that you disable, it's that same cord, and they all seem to lead to this point. So it makes me think that whatever that is, that I guess you could say computer, for lack of a better term, is plugged into this, and it's controlling something. What's it controlling? It's controlling you.
Oh.
Because the first thing you do is there's this panel you open up, and there's this thing that you can pull out, and when you yank it out, you go limp.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I don't know what that means.
I guess it means that you were being controlled the whole time too. So I don't know necessarily if you're even human, or if you're a computer, or if, well, maybe it's not a simulation, but notice that the game always starts the same way too. And this is kind of really getting to speculation, but when you first just come out of the bushes, I wonder, are there more bodies, like more, I guess, little boy clones behind those bushes that you just start the journey over again? And I don't mean to take the mic too much here.
No, you're good. You're good.
But one of the other theories stemming from that is that perhaps it's actually running on a cycle, and this has all been, you know, happening multiple times, because, you know, when you tumble down that cliff at the end, when you're going through that, it almost looks like a museum or something. You see that same hill in the museum. It's like a carbon copy of that hill, along with the little lake that you see at the bottom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't really notice the first time because you're too busy being a blob, but but it's there. You actually kind of walk through that part, and then it kind of makes me think, well, geez, maybe this was all planned. Like maybe this was premeditated. So I don't know if it was premeditated in the sense that this was like a goal they were trying to achieve, or if this has been an ongoing cycle that they've been doing multiple times.
I don't know. That's really interesting. The game, like we've said already, is very cryptic, so you don't even know if this is like Earth.
Yeah, it may not be.
That's really interesting, and that kind of, I guess, reinforces the themes that I had caught on to while playing this game, because I'm not really a lore person. I'm not super into what happened before this, what happened after that. I'm really interested in what the writer is really trying to say.
And I'm generally that way too. It's pretty rare that I get invested enough in lore to kind of read beyond the game. Like I generally want to experience it right there in the game itself.
Even with me though, this game does have enough there that I'm just really curious how this world functions. I really enjoyed seeing how the artists in this game went about exploring certain heady concepts. A couple of them being agency, which is something that you just touched on, because we don't know if this boy is in control of himself. We also see him take control of other people, and we see these worms that are able to control other people as well. And then the other thing that I noticed was there is a pretty heavy emphasis, in my opinion, on conformity and how it's kind of a dangerous thing. An example would be when you're put into this line of people and you have to follow everything that they do or else they kill you. Another example is the very end with the blob monster. You get sucked into it, a blob of people, and you are forced to work with them.
Oh yeah, I never thought of it that way, of being forced to work with them.
So I kind of saw this boy as someone who was not willing to conform to whatever this state wants. And so therefore they want to get rid of him. And unfortunately, because of the way that their society is set up, there is no way for him to escape. And I really liked it because it reminded me of like Twilight Zone or Brave New World or 1984. I really enjoyed this sort of cautionary tale that perhaps I was just telling myself in my own head.
I think I got some of those vibes as well, because I think part of this dystopia, like part of whatever this system was, I think mind control had a very large part in it, and perhaps those worms are the key to that mind control, because it seemed like that's how everybody else, as you said, was conforming to this. And the part where you're in that lineup, at one point you actually have an audience, like you have people watching, and I think maybe it's to desensitize them to this and to make people think it's okay or it's a good thing, or maybe even a warning.
Another thing that I noticed is there's a particular part right before you get sucked into the blob where everybody is staring into this tank, right? Do you remember that part?
Yeah, they're all watching very intently.
The game kind of tricked me to go up and watch with them because I thought that that's how you won the game.
Yeah, I thought that too, because they actually ignore you. Like, they don't even acknowledge that you're there when you go to look through the glass.
Yeah, which is different from any other human you've seen in this game so far.
Yeah, because they've all tried to kill you.
So I got there and I sat there for quite a while thinking that the camera was going to pan out. And then I realized I'm an idiot. I'm just doing what the crowd is doing.
Oh, that's interesting.
I thought it was a really interesting game. I thought it was very artfully done. This is an evolution in Playdead's formula, and I'm really excited to see what they come out with next.
Me too. I haven't heard any murmurings of what they're working on, but I'll be sure to play whatever it is on day one.
I don't think that we really have to say this, but would you recommend this game, Nathan?
Absolutely. It's one of those games, I think, even with spoilers, you're not getting the experience unless you do it yourself.
Oh, I would totally agree. You're not going to feel that tension. If you were to watch this on YouTube or BitChute or something, like, sure, it would be cool, but you really got to play this game and feel it for what it is.
Yeah, because when you first trip up and you don't escape and you get caught, you feel that.
Exactly. I would also recommend this game. This is COG signing out.